I want you to get together.
Welcome, everyone. You're now listening to the Question the Narrative podcast. And this evening, we have a very special guest with us, Paul from Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube. And if you guys haven't heard about him, you need to go check him out, subscribe to his channel. He's doing a lot of good work over there. So, what's up, Paul? How you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I first came across you probably about a month ago, and I'm not gonna lie, ever since I saw that video about you said if the millennial reign already happened, then who are we? You know what I'm saying? And
Mm.
I once I saw that video, it just kind of it's pretty honest ruined my life ever since in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's great, man. It's just it's crazy too because a lot of people they see that just as I did, and I almost scrolled over it, but then it just kind of caught my curiosity because a lot of people when they say that the millennial reign had already happened, it just triggers something in people. And like how you said, you didn't really grow up in the church, and you don't know the quote unquote rules. And so
No.
uh yeah, so I mean, it was a very, very thought-provoking video, and you said something in there that really just caught my attention. And you said that we don't know when we are, and I just had to stop and think about that for a minute or two, and that was just a very profound statement. And I don't know if you'd like to touch in a little bit on what your findings have been. That would be great, just as far as like the timeline and where are we, when are we?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, when you got in touch with me and you were saying, I want you to come on and talk about the millennial reign stuff. I was a bit set back because it's kind of I'm the guy who's known for talking about the Nephilim looking like clowns. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's my thing, and to somehow now be the guy who's talking about this particular topic, it's I don't want to do it a disservice, but I guess I want to preface everything I'm about to say with I'm not the first person to come up with this. All credit where credit's due. There are better people than me out there who have gone into this for years. And a lot of what I've discovered myself is off the back of other people's works, really. And I've got my own theories and ideas along the way, and people just seem to like listening to me ramble on about it for some reason. So I'm happy to do that with you guys today. But
Awesome.
for me, I've been in the conspiracy game for over a decade. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's I've been tracking the subjects as they come and go throughout the years, and how the conspiracy culture and the movement of truthers, follows these trends and concepts and ideas. And I've kind of spent years trying to create a holistic image of the truther culture to understand the conspiracy. That's kind of the name of my channel. So throughout the years, I've kind of deep dived into every topic imaginable and tried to create a bigger picture. So what is going on exactly? What is the conspiracy? How can we condense it into something like an elevator pitch, let's say? How can we best explain this to other people who may not know it's happening? And when the trends I basically saw over the last decade, it seems like the movement went from exposing government corruption initially and people questioning narratives, obviously off the back of something like 9/11.
Right.
People realizing the monetary control, the banking system control, the medical control, the media control, all the worldly stuff it starts with initially, and then things started to get spiritual over maybe the last 12 years. And there's always been this large contingent of maybe new age style truthers, people talking about frequency and consciousness and psychedelic drugs, the pineal gland type of stuff, sacred geometry. So people have always been questioning the validity of reality itself, and from that trend, we saw it slowly evolve into people talking about the flat Earth movement. And,
Right.
and this came not long after the end of the world phenomena in 2012. Everyone thought the world was going to end because the Mayan calendar was coming to an end. And I think that really sparked people questioning their lives in a big way, because a lot of people were really scared that the world was going to end and they were about to die. You know, and I think that gets the ball rolling in a lot of people's minds to start going towards more spiritual concepts, and that's where we saw the rise of these big ideas. The flat Earth being the first of them, and then from that, you know, from the 2012 period to the 2015 period, and maybe a little bit before, flat Earth was big. You know, alternative cosmology was huge. And then the Mandela effect turned up in around 2014 to about 2016. That was huge. That was the next big thing everybody was talking about. And people were
Right.
starting to question reality in a whole new way. And they were realizing things just keep changing. Nothing's consistent. We don't know what is or isn't history. We don't know if our memories are fooling us or if things are being changed, you know. And again, we're not here to get into that today, but I think that also got people thinking that something's not right. Something is not right with our memories or our history. We're way off, you know. And then from the Mandela effect, that kind of dissipated into like a niche subject for a lot of people, and then new things started to rise up, like no forests on flat Earth, which was showing that the Earth seems to be utterly destroyed. What we think is a beautiful planet, you know, or you know, I shouldn't use that word planet. I know that's going to piss a lot of people off, but you know, what people think is a beautiful creation, a thing, whatever it is, an enclosed system or a thing floating in space, whatever. But what people consider the creation to this beautiful, perfect thing is actually a wasteland that's been absolutely mined to the core, and we're living on the husk of its remains. You know, it's not this beautiful thing. And you know, the trees we see everywhere, the forests, are practically moss in comparison to what used to be there. You know. And I think that got people thinking about, again, history seems to be a lie. Something's not right, you know. And there's always been the Anunnaki people, you know, that believe that we are a slave class created by an alien force that appears every now and then. People then started to get into the whole mud flood thing after that theory started to pop up, and then Tartaria suddenly became the next big topic, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then everyone was into, okay, so history really is a lie. And that was obviously based on a lot of the work of Anatoly Fomenko, the Russian mathematician and artist, who came up with this new chronology series where he was trying to explain, you know, that it seems like a lot of history is just contrived and condensed down to remove 1,000 years worth of history that happened, or to make it seem like 1,000 years worth of history has been inserted that doesn't really exist, to lengthen the amount of time that's actually been around. And the way he does that is he goes through these Eastern and Western narratives of great armies rising and great empires rising and falling, and he realizes they're identical, but just with different names throughout the
Right.
mainstream historical narrative. And what he's trying to say is this particular culture over here that rose to prominence and then fell in, let's say, 400 AD, is the same culture that is described in 1400 AD that rose and fell, but we've been told they're two different ones. So someone's been lying here. Someone's been making stuff up and confusing matters to the point where, you know, he makes this fantastic, compelling case that, yeah, we have no idea when we are, really, you know, and the chronology is way off and history has just been written by the winners, basically. So, you know, all these things I kind of watched throughout the years, and I've never been scared to get deep into each one, you know, with each passing topic. And the Tartaria stuff never quite sat right with me because it's got quite a heavy Gnostic contingent behind it. Quite a heavy, it's all about the great reset, there's no hope, everything's about to end, and this world is a prison planet type attitude, you know, and the controllers have full control over everything type of thing. But something was never quite rang right with it for me. Although I could see, yes, there's evidences for a shared global architectural style, which doesn't make sense because the narratives we're told about most of these buildings just don't work. They don't work. They cannot have been built in the time frames they said they were built. And some crazy stories come up that a lot of these buildings were burnt down, then rebuilt, and this kind of, and the supposed technology these people would have been working with, none of it just added up to me. So I could see that was true, but I didn't quite understand how it could. The whole repeated reset thing just threw me off a bit. It's kind of, I feel like we're giving too much credit to this ancient Tartarian empire, or whatever that means, you know. And we
Hmm.
have the history of the Tartars, and we know they were kind of isolated into mainly Siberia, Mongolia region, and Russia. You know, there's no evidence that they were a global empire. Again, I shouldn't use that word, a worldwide empire. You know, so something was off about it, but I knew, yeah, okay, there's clear evidences history is wrong. We are way off, and like many people in the conspiracy culture throughout this decade, I too have been keeping a close eye on the signs of the times. And most of Christian conspiracy, and even just mainstream Christian culture in general, you know, never mind the conspiracy world, has had their eyes on the future coming of Christ. You know, and we're looking for signs of tribulation to come to pass, aren't we? And the signs of the times. You know, we're keeping our eyes on world events, looking for the mark of the beast and the false prophets and all these type of things. And that's predominantly what most people are focused on in the conspiracy culture when it comes to Christian conspiracy and wider conspiracy. Who is going to be the Antichrist? What is the mark of the beast? You know, are the signs in the heavens showing, proving that you know, we're in Revelations 13, for example, and is the moon at the woman's feet in Virgo, and therefore we were foretold this stuff. And people are just setting dates every month and every year. This is the end. Jesus is coming in this year, you know, and it's been like that for a long time. And I've always seen many antichrists come and go. I've seen many mark of the beasts come and go. You know, I've seen many end times pouring of the vials thing come and go. You know, and none of it. As I'm a Christian myself, you know, don't get me wrong. So that's me. I've been looking and I've been on board with that for a while. This futurist mindset. But then when this video started to appear talking about the millennial reign of Christ, my ears perked up because I realized I didn't really know anything about that. I never really heard of them. No one ever talks about the millennial reign of Christ. I had read it in Revelation, but I never really registered it, if you get what I mean, because it was just not on my radar as something that was important, or it's something that's way in the future that I will probably never see type of attitude. And I especially didn't really know about the little season. You know, that this time after the millennial reign where the devil would be given a short period to take over everything once more, just as he did before tribulation began and before Jesus came and established his millennial reign. But then when I heard this video by somebody called Exploring Tartaria, she mapped
Right.
out this concept, you know, which blew my mind. And I'm sure everyone who's been in this subject now has seen these videos, you know, that she mapped it out perfectly and explained how we can see remnants all over the earth of what people call Tartarian architecture. It seems like it actually, iconography wise, mainly revolves around saints and Jesus predominantly. And she put forth the idea of, is it possible we're actually in the little season and the millennial reign of Christ has already happened, and all of our history in the modern day, the past 200, 300, 500 years, however long you want to say it's been since the little season started, has been utterly rewritten, and our past has just been covered up to what truly happened. And we are not waiting for the second coming of Christ. That's already happened. The millennial kingdom has already been established in a physical sense on earth. It came in the clouds down with him. He's already resurrected the saints, you know, and the rest of the dead get resurrected after the 1,000 years. And I'll let you speak from it. We can jump off from what I just said there and speculate on what that means to say the rest of the dead have resurrected. But that's basically how I got into it. That was my entrance point into this particular theory. But I sat on it for years, you know, because that video came out years ago, and I've just been taking it all in for years, watching all the videos on this take to explain the Tartarian angle. Well, what's the Christian angle? Because I believe the truth is there in the biblical narrative. You know, that's where I stand. But I'll admit I've never been able to square a lot of things up until this theory. A lot of things just didn't make sense with a Christian perspective until this happened. You know, and I always knew there was something off about the futurist viewpoint, that we're always waiting for Jesus to return and establish his kingdom. You know, the tribulation is about to begin. That never sat right with me. It was just a feeling, a gut feeling, you know, there's something off about it. So when this theory turned up, it changed things. And I'll
Absolutely.
stop there. I'll let you guys speak and see.
No, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And Shane and I, we dug into this a couple of weeks ago, and the whole futurist theory thing and the third temple, and we actually dug into the 70-week prophecy of Daniel. And so the church today as a whole say that there's a pause in the 69th week, and this pause can be 2,000 years. So we're waiting on that last week to come to fulfillment, right?
Hmm.
But the whole thing with the prophecy of Daniel is, at the time he was prophesying that, there wasn't even a second temple that was built yet. And so a lot of people, either by deception or ignorance, are saying, well, that's prophecy of the third temple. But
Right.
the thing is that the second temple hadn't even been built yet. And at the cutting off of Messiah on the 69th week, he he literally caused the sacrifices and the oblations to cease. And so they're wanting to recreate that, in a sense where we have to make another temple so that the sacrifices can start up again, in order for the sacrifices to then stop again, which doesn't make any sense because it has already been stopped for, well, I mean, 2,000 years, but I mean, it might be a lot less from what we're speculating, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is what I mean. There's how they can kind of jam 2,000 years into the biblical narrative. You have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to make that, to square that and make that work. I believe
Yeah.
Jesus at his word, and I think when he said, I'm coming back immediately, the time is at hand, I believed him. And I believe he was talking to the people of that time, not to a future generation, us.
I want you to get together. I want you to get together.
Narrative, you have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to make that, to square that and make that work. I believe
Yeah.
Jesus at his word, and I think when he said, I'm coming back immediately, the time is at hand, I believed him. And I believe he was talking to the people of that time, not to a future generation, us. And this is what I mean. It always felt a bit snake oily when people were preaching this futurist doctrine to me. There was something
Mm.
off about it, and I didn't know what to do or how to question it, because Jesus saved me personally. I know he's real, and my faith is in him, and I know it's the truth. But something about this mainstream doctrine, which everybody believes in Christendom, just didn't. At the back of my mind,
Right.
it was always itching. Like, there's something off here. There's something off. And then when this theory came around, and like I said, I don't know the rules of engagement because I wasn't raised in a church, and I was saved in 2014. I'm 30 now. I'm 31 now. Should I say? I'm getting older, and I'm still not a member of any church, because every time I tried, they just. I'm not trying to disparage them, but they're just not thinking about these things, and it's not enough
Right.
for me. It's just not enough for me. Okay, I'm not looking to join these churches and cause strife and be a problem for anybody. So I think it's probably best I just stay out of it with my own ideas and thoughts. It's that type of thing. But again, I suppose when I started talking about these things on my channel, I was naive in thinking that most Christians would understand what I was talking about. They would know about the little season and the millennial reign type of stuff. So I wasn't aware for the backlash I was about to receive, or even just speculating about the possibility of this being a thing. And I guess that's the difference between a conspiracy theorist Christian and a normal church-going Christian. It's just not on their radar, is it? And I mean, I've made a document, and I've been compiling quotes that kind of show that, yes, the Bible makes it clear, like unequivocally clear, that Jesus was saying it was going to happen immediately, not long after his death and resurrection. You know, and after the transfiguration, he was coming back quickly. You know, he wasn't coming back in 2,000 years. So I'll just get the document up and let's just reel off a few quotes, you know, and a few talking points based on this. But
Sure.
it says, you know, Jesus will come soon, quote. So we have Matthew 16:28. Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, there will be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." You know, I mean, people could say, oh, well, no, he was talking about, you know, people will see him resurrect from the dead. That's not what it
Right.
says. It says they will see him coming in his kingdom. That's not him raising from the dead. That's something else, you know. Mark 9:1. And he said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that there be some that stand here, which shall not taste of death, till they see the kingdom of God come with power. So they're talking about the kingdom of God here, a kingdom of some kind, appearing to them in some way. And then people speculate he was being metaphorical. He's just talking about, you know, the power of Jesus's energy suddenly taking over the world or something like that. That's basically what they meant to talk about, especially the amillennialists who say, you know, the millennial reign's already happening and he's ruling from heaven with his father, you know. It was never a physical kingdom, people always say. And again, I would argue that's not what it says. You know, he's talking about people will see the kingdom of God come with power. They will see it. They won't feel it in the warm and fuzzies in their heart. You know, they will see it. Like we have Luke 9:27. You know, but I tell you of a truth, there will be some standing here who will not taste death till they see the kingdom of God. Pretty straightforward language, you know. People right here in front of me right now will not die before they see me come back with a kingdom. You know what I mean? But that's pretty black and white language, you know. Luke 2:26. And it was revealed unto him by the Holy Ghost that he should not see death before he has seen the Lord's Christ. Matthew 10:23. But when they persecute you in this city, flee into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man become. Now, you can speculate on where the true Israel is.
Yeah, I wanted to get into
You
that a little
know,
bit
but
too.
let's just say, you know, for the sake of the normies out there who are in this idea of Christianity, that the Middle East is where it is. The Israel we call Israel today is the Israel of the Bible. You know, it's not very big, is it? There's not many cities they can flee to before he turns up. You know, Romans 13:11 through 13, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. It's coming. There's an urgency behind the language in most of these books written by the apostles, you know, and in Revelation. 1 Peter 4:7, but the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. And people think they're talking to us, you know, 2,000 years later. That's not what's happening. He's talking to people right next to him. They are writing letters to churches, to people who are waiting for him to come, for Jesus to return. And Peter's telling them, be sober, you guys who I'm writing this letter to right now in the specific time period. You know, and watch unto prayer, because the end of all things is at hand. It's about to happen, not 2,000 years later. You know,
right?
And again, you know, I got more repeat quotes here, but let me see. You know, Jesus repeated himself over and over again in the Revelation to John. You know, the book of Revelation, in the start and the end. So in the beginning of Revelation, Revelations 1:1, things which must shortly come to pass. That's not talking about 2,000 years later when this was written on the island of Patmos, you know. And you could speculate when, 70 AD, some people say 98, 96 AD, but I'm not going to trust any timestamp dates in any of these things right now, to be honest, because everything's up in the air as far as I'm concerned. But when it was written, he said in the very first line of Revelations, things which must shortly come to pass. You know, Revelations 1:3, the time is at hand. Revelations 1:7, Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. Now that's a big one.
Right.
The people who pierced him will see him come in the clouds, physically, on earth with their own eyes. They will see him come back with his kingdom. And those who actually crucified him will live long enough to see him come back. That's the words of Jesus Christ himself. I can't make him a liar just because I want to believe that I get to be in the millennial kingdom with him or something, or and don't get me wrong, not everybody has that attitude. Not everybody's like upset because they don't get to rule for 1,000 years with him or live during this time of peace.
Right.
It's not fair to plaster everybody who has the futurist belief that that's what they want and why they're upset to have it taken away. It's not. Some people have just been in that world for so long, they haven't even comprehended that there is an alternative way of viewing it. So it's a shock to the system. It's just a shock, if you've done one thing your entire life and you've done so many works and based your life surrounding this idea that you're living during the time where Jesus is about to return, it can be shocking to find out that maybe you've been lied to and that's not the case. That there's been a cover-up. There's some examples here of why we're not in tribulation. I got this quote from somebody who posted it onto a comment, and I thought it was really insightful. So I'll just read it to you, and it's a basic explanation. The current nation state of Israel, which was established in 1948, is not of God because the land promises made to Abram and the fathers were already fulfilled a very long time ago. This is recorded in the Old Testament. We see in Deuteronomy 1:8, 21, 11:24, Joshua 21:43 through 45, Joshua 23:14, and Jeremiah 32:23, and Nehemiah 9:7 through 8. King David and Solomon were in possession of the whole land up to the river Euphrates, as promised to Abraham in Genesis 15:18. This is recorded in 2 Samuel 8:3, 1 Kings 4:21, 24:2, and Chronicles 9:26. So the lands have already been occupied and the promise has already been fulfilled. So this new nation state of Israel we call today is not a fulfillment of a prophecy it's already been fulfilled and done and dusted and it's over with. Israel's continued occupation of the land depended on their obedience to God, and it was because of their national sins that they lost it, and that's recorded again in Deuteronomy and Joshua. The Jews were restored to the land after a 70-year Babylonian captivity, as promised by God in Daniel 9:2, but lost it again after rejecting their Messiah, Jesus, when Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD. So they've already got the lands back and then lost it again. Repeatedly, it's done. There's no promise of a new No, we're not in that time period. It's already happened. So people thought that was that global event, that world event of Israel being established was prophecy being fulfilled. And we saw not long after that the revival of the futurist doctrine in the Jesus movement in the 60s and the 70s, and a lot of people think that was mainly a counter-reaction to the counterculture of the hippie movement of the 60s and 70s. It was like a Christian counter-movement to the New Age movement that was rising up in rebellion. But you realise, in true controlled opposition fashion, even though the doctrine is sound, because they're talking about Jesus Christ being who he said he was and all that type of thing, it's perfectly sound as long as we are pre-tribulation. And that's the thing that they purported the most in the 60s. They purported that, we can see Israel as a nation state has been created, therefore it's premillennialism all the way to the end. Jesus is about to return, and that became the established doctrine of the modern world up until now. And it's sneaky. They kind of sneaked it in through the back door. Now, obviously, premillennialism has always been the basic thought process people have said, so-called, but we don't know how far back our history actually goes and how much is true. People point to the Nicene Creed, don't they? The Nicene Creed, where it's written down by Constantine, tried to normalize the belief system, shall we say, of Christendom, and he ordered that this early church council in I think it was 340, was it? I'm maybe getting the date wrong there, but they created this creed, didn't they? And it's all pretty straightforward Trinitarian Christianity, up until the end where it says the Catholic Church is supreme over everything and we wait for his return. You know, and people say premillennialism has always been the case since the early church fathers. Therefore, if you say anything else, you're a heretic. You know, but but I don't believe that has always been the case. I'm not 100% certain that was really written in 341, as they say, because history has been obscured and stretched and twisted to no ends. And it's possible he did appear not long after they wrote that, so it's still fulfilled and done. So they weren't lying, you know, and it's already done. I mean, Noel Hadley of the Unexpected Cosmology, who I'm going to be talking to on Tuesday on my own channel, he's made a very good case that historically speaking, it seems like tribulation events did occur in 541. You know, but obviously what we call 541 may actually be 50 AD or 70 AD, and we've just labelled it wrong with the wrong dates because the people that wrote the histories have lied to us, you know. So we don't know exactly how to piece the time puzzles together to make a coherent chronology necessarily, but this revival, we'll call it, of premillennialism in the 60s certainly solidified in the modern age that, yeah, that we are about to have tribulation happen again in the minds of people. And I don't think it always was the case. I think a lot of people coming out of the millennial kingdom, if it's true, you know, that it's already happened, I think there was a battle for a long time to make sure premillennialism becomes the prominent thought again. So I think, you know, there's evidences that people have shown that getting into who are we exactly, if this is the little season, you know, there's evidences to say that people have maybe survived through the millennial kingdom. People have lived through his reign. And only the saints, the already resurrected, perfected humans who lived for 1,000 years and didn't die, got to go with him to the beloved city, the camp of saints, shall we say, before handing it over to Satan for his little season. But that means there were still people around who may not have gone with him. Maybe it's possible some people just didn't want to leave their homes. It's possible because humans have always been rebellious. People didn't want to go with him, you know, and they wanted to stay where they were. Well, so be it. But Jesus' enemies also lived through the millennial reign, I believe. And they were forced to live through his reign because they had extended life during this time, you know, because everything was perfected and beyond normality, as we would call it today. And I think those people, once he cleared off, very quickly sided with Satan and took it upon themselves to eradicate history and keep the people who remember the millennial reign in line. And this is where we find insane asylums being everywhere during the early 1800s, late 1700s, just popping up all over the place. And, you know, religious fervour and delusion was one of the biggest reasons people were locked up in these things. And it seems likely the controllers who are survivors of the millennial reign locked up all the other survivors of the millennial reign who still believed in Jesus and knew that he had already reigned. So there's been a dark, concerted cover-up effort, it seems. All the research just keeps bringing more and more of this dark, disgusting history up, you know, that what we call secret societies today, you know, the conspiracy culture is obsessed with Freemasons and secret societies, you know, and they control everything. Well, these are the original people immediately after the millennial reign ended, when Satan took over, who controlled everything. They took control of everything. They were the foot soldiers of the little season, and they claimed ownership of all the free masonry everywhere, you know, and they're the ones who took control of the orphans. The Oddfellows specifically were the ones who took it upon themselves to look after all the orphans. Orphans of who exactly? Why were there so many orphans everywhere? You know, why was it? But is it possible the children of the millennial kingdom parents who were all locked away in insane asylums just needed putting somewhere and relocating and moving and filling up these empty cities that were left behind? There's so much speculation you can go through here, but mark my words, Jesus said himself he was coming immediately. The 2,000-year thing is a lie. It just is. And again, I don't have all the answers. I can't come to you guys today and say I've got it all mapped out perfectly. It's just clear we've been lied to, and it's not.
I want you to get together. I want you to get together.
So, yeah, I had heard when you were talking with Toad Toad House or something like that, and he was talking about the futurist doctrine too, and how it's a little concerning to him as well, how it's so pushed and so out in the open, this futuristic doctrine, whereas it seems like Satan and the enemy is okay with that message. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's just even the like a pre-trib rapture stuff, it's in the Hollywood movies and stuff. And so if we know in today's society that if they don't want you to know a certain thing, that it's going to be squashed, it's going to be buried, even just like the history stuff that we're talking about now. It's just it's not going to be easy to find that kind of information, but all of this futurist stuff, it's just out in the open, it's broadcast on all the TVs, and it seems like Satan is okay with that message.
Exactly. That's another thing. People say, where's the evidence that he's already come? Where's the historical evidence? And I would say, well, actually, there is plenty of historical evidence. You, by your standards, you just deem it irrelevant. So there is that, first of all. But also, I don't believe anything gets shown in the mainstream media unless it's allowed to be there. Whatever can go under that black box in the corner of your room is a part of the system's control mechanism. And, it's the thing. People believe Christendom is strong. It's growing. There's churches everywhere. It's one of the fastest growing religions, next to Islam, shall we say. But it's one of those, people believe we live in a day, where there's revivals all the time, and there's new Protestant denominations rising up everywhere, and the word of God has spread to everyone in the nation. There's only, we're reaching everybody now, and this is how it said it would be. Information would go to and fro. Everyone would run to and fro, and information would grow in the times before Jesus returned. And everyone believes, Christendom is powerful and strong and growing, and we'll stick it to those evil controllers and evil in the world, and Jesus will establish his kingdom, and there'll be peace forever and ever and ever, and everyone will be resurrected in holy light bodies, and all the evil people will burn in hell. But people do believe, like, this is the prominent thought. This is what's preached by the mega churches, you know what I mean? And this is what's preached everywhere, that, yeah, Jesus is about to return. And we're about to go through tribulation, and good will win in the end, that type of attitude. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that is true. But the deception is in, where are we in the timeline? Are we really waiting for a Jesus to turn up and establish a kingdom, or are we waiting for final great white throne judgment at the end of time? And if this is one of these niggling, what you've brought up there, and what Theron, that's his name, who runs the channel with his wife Bethany.
That's right.
Toad House 7 Homestead. Now,
Yeah.
what he said, I agree, and I brought it up myself. The fact that the mainstream allowed view is that message that Jesus is about to return should raise your eyebrows immediately. Okay, it's, why is it allowed to be said if it's such a bad thing, and Satan hates it so much and he owns all the media? Why would he allow that to be said on TV? You know what I mean? And it's a subtle deception. It's very subtle, because it makes Christianity seem powerful and strong and growing and brilliant. And the Christians who are a part of it are, new apostles, you know what I mean, who are spreading the gospel and the word and casting demons out of people, and everything's wonderful and great, But that's exactly where Satan would want you to be, isn't it? He would want you to believe that you know it all and everything's perfect and everything's going great for you, But just by simply confusing where you are in time, that can change everything. And you can go ahead and preach the coming of the new Savior, the coming of the Savior is nigh and is about to happen, as much as you want, because that's great for him, because he's going to turn up and be that Savior for you. He's going to put himself in that position. He's going to be as the Most High himself. You're all waiting for Jesus to return, so Satan, Lucifer, can put on a pretty good show for you. They can come as an angel of light, and people are waiting for that, and it's like, yeah, sure, there might be an antichrist that comes, a false beast system will rise, a new world order, and we'll defeat it, and then Jesus will come and judge everybody. But if we're already past all of that, the thing we're about to see that's going to call itself Jesus is not Jesus. We have to remember that, because he's not going to come to establish a kingdom the last time. He's going to bring fire from heaven, and then everything is dead and it's immediate judgment. it's something else, you know. An army needs to be raised first, and this is the thing about this theory. It kind of makes sense of a lot of other conspiracy theories. And this is why I was
Hmm.
attracted to it so much. So, for example, the alien phenomena that we see so much, you know, the UFO, the coming UFO invasion that's been leaked forever, you know, through military, and they're always hinting at it through predictive programming movies that there's going to be an alien invasion, and all of humanity is going to come together to fight this common enemy. You know, this idea that it's Reagan's speech all over again. You know, they've been prepping us through the media for so long about an alien invasion of some kind. You know, Werner von Braun talking about the final stage is an fake alien invasion. You know, it's all a lie. You know, it's all going to be this contrived story that these evil controllers are going to come up with. And then we're told, you know, Christ will return us. I don't know where it fits into the biblical narrative. I'm pretty sure the Bible doesn't talk about aliens turning up anywhere. You know, but for some reason, a lot of Christian conspiracy theorists are obsessed with this idea too, and are on it and saying, oh, it's fallen angels, it's demons, and it's kind of, well, that narrative really isn't anywhere exactly, you know, especially not pre-tribulation, that there's going to be aliens turning up in flying saucers or something. We got Project Bluebeam on the side of all this. We got the chemtrails that people say are nanoparticles, which are going to be used with Project Bluebeam to project a holographic invasion in the sky. Loads of things are building towards this spectacle that's about to be created, and it's going to be completely contrived and fake, isn't it? You know, well, that would make sense if that's about to happen. If we're in the millennials, if we're in the post-millennial season, and this is a little season, because Satan needs to gather an army to make war with the camp of saints. Okay,
Yep.
so how's he going to do that? How's he going to convince pretty much everybody whose number is of the sands of the sands of the sea, a 1 billion-man army, all coming together to surround something? We'll call it the beloved city, you know, which is, as it says in the Bible, to make war with the camp of saints. How's he going to do that? Well, if everyone believes aliens have invaded and they're in the North Pole, let's say, or wherever they're going to be, you know, this floating giant thing in the sky, that's like a floating city, shall we say, of some kind, the mothership, shall we call it? You know, if you can convince that they come here to attack and take us down, let's go make war with it, then you've just gathered Gog and Magog from the four corners of the earth to surround the beloved city, haven't you? And we all believe we're fighting against evil, oppressive aliens who have come to control us and take over, or whatever nefarious thing we've been brainwashed with. So it kind of, things start to make sense when you start viewing them in this new perspective, this new paradigm. You know, that's all these conspiracy theories ever are. They're a paradigm shift each time, you know. And I think this feels like a final shift, a final paradigm, a final lens to view it all through. How can we make sense of all these agendas everywhere we see? What's the point of it all? This is a question I get all the time as a conspiracy theorist. Why would they do this? Why would they try to control us so much? You know, what's the end goal here? What's the point? Why would they go to so much effort? And it's kind of, well, the little season narrative explains this. The time is short. It's a short season, and I don't know how long a little season is. How long's a piece of string? You know what I mean? I think it's as long as it takes to get that army together. But he's got a job to do. The devil, at the end of the day, God is in control. You know, and again, these are things again I don't have the answers to, but I made a video saying, you know, we have to rethink everything now. We've spent the best part of 2 decades in the truther movement aiming at the wrong goal, looking at the shadows on the wall. You know, we've not been really paying attention to the right things. We've been taken for a ride if this millennial kingdom thing is true. You know, if this little season thing is true. We've been thinking we're exposing the evil when really all we're doing is feeding it. Do you get what I mean? We're actually helping by getting everybody riled up, waiting for a you know, an alien invasion or a false savior or the Antichrist to turn up or whatever they want to say, you know what I mean? And I do believe they're going to put on a good show for us that's going to look like tribulation. evolving aliens and interdimensional beings, the Nephilim returning as it was in the days of Noah, all these things, human hybrid chimeras appearing once more, maybe even things rising out of the sea or something. I don't know. They're going to do something, and they're going to make it look pretty convincing, and they're going to make a convincing mark of the beast. And this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying just because the millennial season has come and gone that we no longer have to be wary of coming deceptions and events. Things are still going to happen, all right? Horrible things are going to happen. Christians are going to be persecuted and beheaded just as they were before, okay? They're going to make it look like tribulation is happening. But it's all contrived. It's all orchestrated. It wasn't the real one. It's already happened. Okay, so what comes at the end of it all? When it's not Jesus, how many people are going to lose their faith? They were waiting for him to come in the clouds and save them. But he doesn't turn up. It just gets worse. Okay, I don't know. Then I don't know what happens. I don't know what he's going. It's some kind of AI transhumanist nightmare hellhole, no doubt, where it's kind of like a constant torment or something. I don't know. Like something. He's going to establish something. Maybe his own version of his own millennial kingdom is what Satan's aiming for here, so he can be like Jesus. Maybe that's what the end goal is. But it's not going to. It's not going to look like the tribulation event they were hoping for. The Christians are all waiting for. It's going to be something else, which is going to destroy their faith. And maybe then he'll be able to gather that army because everyone will feel betrayed. Maybe. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm in the realms of speculation here of how it's all going to pan out. But what I know is if the tribulation event has already happened and we're in the little season, we can no longer take things at face value. We can't just look at the stars and think we see the signs unfolding of Revelations 13, for example. Angels are in rebellion. Angels are stars. Why should we trust the signs in heavens anymore? So, why should we trust where they choose to position themselves and where the planets decide to align and be? The planets are wandering stars. They are angels who left their first estate. They shouldn't even be there. So why are people putting so much faith in these signs? Things are different now. It's not the world that it was before tribulation, and it's trippy to think about. And all I do is speculate on my channel. Again, I'm not an expert in this necessarily. I just know a lot about it. I know a lot of things about a lot of things. I know a little bit about every topic in the conspiracy. So, as someone piecing this puzzle together to create a holistic picture, you cannot just throw this little season theory out. You really can't. Everything's up for debate now. Everything's on the table because we have been hideously lied to from the very beginning. We already know we've been lied to. Why is this such a far stretch for some people? Do you have theories? Do you have ideas? Share with me, guys, because I'm in for a conversation about this. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. With all this deception and the obvious fake history and all these founded buildings and stuff. I mean, like you said, this Satan's short season theory, it's definitely on the table and it's definitely biblical. Someone has to be part of that, remnant, the number of whom is like the sand of the sea, occupying these nations. I mean, somebody, you know what I mean? Somebody has to be that generation. And it's not too far-fetched to think that could be us, especially with all the deception and the false narratives that are being fed to us. And like you said, I really like this theory, and it makes a lot more sense of the scriptures. And especially when you realize, what happened in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem and all that. Yeah, I'm just, really new to this theory. I knew before this, though, I knew something was off the timeline. I mean, I could just feel it. When I read the Bible for myself, it just didn't seem to line up with what, the preachers were telling us. I mean, I grew up in church my whole life. And of course, my pastor preached pre-trib rapture, almost every Sunday. That was the main topic, was pre-trib rapture and all that. But that just never made sense to me either. And then I got away from pre-trib rapture, and I was like, well, we're going to definitely, according to the scriptures, we'll definitely go through the tribulation. and the rapture happens at the second coming. But you know, my whole life I never even knew about 70 AD or the events that took place on that day because we don't got any scripture for it.
Mhm.
Why did the Bible stop being written, you know, after the book of Revelation? Why aren't there more books telling us what happened during that time? That's a huge prophecy fulfilled, you know, the destruction of the temple. Jesus said that there wouldn't be one stone left upon another. And that came true exactly as he said. And that was a sign of his imminent return was when when the temple was going to be destroyed. He said, you know, don't even look back. Don't come down off the housetop and go in your house and get any clothes. Just flee.
Mhm.
And you know, what else happened and what else is being hid from us? It's a really, like I said, this theory just makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, I can't prove it, and I'm new to it, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It
Yeah.
really does.
Well, we're trying our best to create what we can with what we have. This is all we
Right.
can do, really. I tried to explain it last night. You know, this is one of those a lot like, let's say, the flat Earth theory. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where all of history and science is telling us it's a ball, but our eyes and our perceptions and our sense experience is telling us otherwise, isn't it?
Yep.
This is what this kind of theory is. All of our history books are telling us it hasn't come yet. But what our eyes can see and the evidences that are clear to us by the way things are going down and what's left on the earth that we can actually see with our own eyes, it's telling us it did happen. Melted buildings everywhere, signs of absolute destruction everywhere, land utterly decimated by electricity everywhere. You know,
Mm.
no, barely any old trees. Yes, some old trees do exist. Sure, not enough. Like something happened, something reset everything. And the only thing that biblically can square that is tribulation. You know,
Right.
the evidences we see. You know, and again, you know, there's a great one people keep posting to me in the Telegram group, and it might take me a while to find it now if I did try. If anyone is listening who knows what I'm talking about and wants to post it in the Telegram group right now, that would be great. But it's basically evidences that all these buildings, which prophecy, apparently tribulation prophecy requires to still be in existence, don't exist anymore. And
Mm.
there's evidences that most of these places in the Middle East that you know the tribulation was talking about, that you know you'll see this happen here and that happen there. Well, those places are already destroyed. There's nothing
Yeah.
left. So how can prophecy come true and be tribulation come to pass if these places no longer exist and are just rubble? You know, how is that possible? Like
Yeah.
history they're trying to tell us one thing, but our senses are telling us the other. It's self-evident by the things which we can see, you know, and we're always told you can't trust your senses, and I don't think that's true. I think that's a lie. I'm going to trust my senses on this one. Something's off, and
Right.
the evidence is there if you look. I mean, this is another thing. This is what's shocking about this concept as well. You know, the buildings, these beautiful buildings everywhere that don't seem to make sense when we were told they were built. The people really couldn't have built them the way they said it on such a scale and in such number with such uniform style across every continent. It just doesn't make sense. The history is a lie. But these are buildings I've walked past my entire life, even in my own home, little small town, you know. And then suddenly I'm actually seeing them for the first time because they're on my radar, and they're incredible. And it's these are the type of paradigm shifting topics we're talking about here. You know, suddenly I can't walk through the park, the Victorian Park now in my city in the UK without seeing it for what it is. It's an incredibly beautiful thing with extremely complex stone bridges, cenotaphs, benches with Egyptian iconography all over them, all completely out of place in cast iron, metal, steel work, you know what I mean, in ways that are just boggle the mind with such intricate details far beyond what was necessary for the time, you know, and you realise that these are everywhere, all over the place, and it's kind of who had the time and the manpower to do this? Well, it seems like these things could only really have been built. Sure, we can do it now, but for the times they said, no chance. And they must have been built during a time where people had the time to make things beautiful and for the sake of beautiful, rather than utilitarian, which is what we do today with our buildings. They have to be useful, not beautiful. You can see that there's like this linear digression, not progression.
Right.
We've gotten worse at things. We take shortcuts now. We don't take the time to make things look good. But there's people in the past did in ways that just boggle the mind. People are really experimental with architecture in the past. During this millennial kingdom, let's say, if that's when the architecture did come from. And the artwork that was being created, the messages behind it, all of it is just screaming something else, something next level. And I would always in the past go to these buildings and think, oh, they look really nice and beautiful. But when you look at them through this lens, because that's what we're doing at the end of the day, we're putting on a lens here, aren't we, and viewing the world through it. It changes everything. It looks everything looks amazing, and you realize what's going on. That we are just squatters in a world that didn't belong to us. So who are we exactly then? Like what's going on here? Who are we? Like I said, are we the remnants of people who survived through the millennial reign and were just their descendants? Or, as it's described in Revelations 20, it says the rest of the dead live not again till the 1,000 years has ended. Now,
Oh man.
is that immediately after the 1,000 years has ended? Or is that metaphorically for at the end of the 1,000 years and then at the end of the little season, everybody's resurrected at once for final judgment? I don't think it says that. I think it's telling us the first resurrection involves the martyrs. They will reign with Christ forever, including through his millennial reign. And they will go to the camp of saints. They will be the saints. They will be in their perfected light bodies. They've got a free pass at judgment. They're done. You know what I mean? The judgment's pretty much done. You know what I mean? They passed the test. They're in. But then the rest of the dead, everybody else, is resurrected after the 1,000-year reign. So there's a second resurrection. Now, resurrection means physical body. You can't. You're resurrected into flesh. That's what resurrected is. When you're in spirit form and in heaven with God at the great white throne for judgment, you're not resurrected into a body. You've just been woken up as a spirit form. I guess it's not really a resurrection, is it? Christ resurrected into a physical body, and that's what he's offering everybody else. The saints got that in the first resurrection. Blessed are the ones who take part in the first resurrection, as it says, because they get to reign with Christ forever. They get to go through his millennial reign and then some. But everybody else, all the rest of the dead who before all of this, throughout all of history, those who never even got a chance to know Christ, who never even heard of him before, well, I believe they get a chance and they get resurrected again. And maybe that's us now in the little season. Maybe we are people who have already died. I know people don't like to hear that. I'm not talking about reincarnation here. I'm talking about resurrection. The Bible is a book about conquering death and resurrection. Why is it unheard of to consider that God may resurrect the dead in the end time to live through the little season? Because we live in a time now where if you go out of your way, you can find out about Jesus Christ and get saved. You can. Right. You can in this world. It may be after his millennial reign, but everybody knows who Christ is. There may be some pockets of the world where people don't, but I think the Holy Spirit still works and they can still get to know him without the book.
I want you to get together. I want you to get together.
Yeah, what you said about reincarnation, too, how a lot of people get, iffy about that. But Shane and I were talking about this the other day, that in scripture, John the Baptist was actually Elijah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever looked into all that, but
Yeah.
John the Baptist didn't even know he was Elijah, and Jesus said, "No, he is. This was Elijah, which was for to come," which is another prophecy because it said Elijah was going to come before the day of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, as weird as it sounds, could it be that John the Baptist was a reincarnation of Elijah? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't really understand.
Well, doesn't he say clearly John is Elijah? Isn't that
He clearly says it.
so? That's a
Yeah.
resurrection. No, that's the same spirit resurrected. And I can't remember where I saw this, but people who saw Jesus after his resurrection, he didn't look the same, did he?
No,
You know,
they
so
they knew it. They knew it was him, but
yeah,
they just he didn't look the same.
he was in a different type of body. So
Right.
from this, and it happens all the time. And people are raised from the dead. Didn't Jesus raise like 10 people from the dead when he was walking? You know, Lazarus being probably the most popular one that people know of, but I'm pretty sure he raised people from the dead. So people who have died, bodies rotting in the tomb, resurrected. It's possible. All things are possible through God and Christ. That's don't limit him in that respect, you know, because reincarnation's blasphemous. Then it's kind of, well, we're not talking about reincarnation. We're not talking about your soul in an endless cycle coming back into the earth repeatedly after every death into a different form based on your karma and how good or bad you were, depends on what you get to come back as. That's reincarnation. We're talking about biblical resurrection. You, your essence, your soul comes back in its intended God-created flesh body. That's different. That's not reincarnation. That's resurrection at God's appointed time only, not in repeated cycles. So God has appointed the times. He's laid them out in Revelation. Obviously, Jesus rose people from the dead as examples of his power. And it even says, Lazarus has died, so I can prove to you as witnesses that I can bring people back from the dead. That's why this has happened. He's making it clear it's all done for an intended purpose. So it's always explained why these things happen. And in Revelation it says there's a first resurrection after tribulation. Those who endured to the end, or those who were beheaded for his name's sake, are resurrected. Those are the saints. Those are the martyrs, you know. Those are the apostles who were killed, you know, to spread the gospel during this early time, just before his immediate return. They get to reign with him forever. That's the first resurrection. And then it says, then there's a second resurrection after the 1,000 years has ended. So the Bible's telling you there are resurrections of flesh bodies. And what I'm saying right now is we must be either descendants of those who lived through the millennial reign, or we are those resurrected, or the descendants of those who are resurrected. But it's likely our soul, or nefesh, is one of the many who is waiting to be resurrected, that's kind of birthed into this world through our parents, you know, or something like that is happening. And it's kind of, is a little season as long as it takes for us all to be resurrected once. And as soon as every spirit or soul has taken part in the second resurrection, then the little season's over. Is that what a little season is defined as? I don't know. How long does it take, you know, to get through all these? I don't think it's everybody all at once, maybe. I think it is a case of through birthing this has happened, maybe, and it's maybe this is why abortion is such a big thing today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to slow down the process of these people who take part in the second resurrection having their chance. You know, maybe that's why the push for that is so vigorous today. Maybe he's trying to make his short season longer. Maybe that's what all this is all about. I think reality is so much more trippy and complicated than we can understand, you know. And
Yeah.
when like I said, these agendas at play start to fit when you start considering what the Bible actually says about this time, what people who would live during this time. And the people who live during this time, it's not explained clearly, but we are told the second resurrection happens after the millennial reign ends. So we have to speculate on what that means. And
Right.
that's kind of where I settle on that. And it's interesting. You were talking about the day of the Lord there earlier, weren't you? And I was just talking about this yesterday. And I think the day of the Lord, from what I'm gathering, I think Shelley at No Place Like Home was kind of mentioning this, that the day of the Lord isn't necessarily one event, although there is the big one, you know, tribulation. there's many days of the Lord's for multiple civilizations who suffer his wrath. That everyone's day comes when they don't turn from their sin, essentially. But you get descriptions of the days of the Lord, I think, and a lot of it always involves fire coming down from heaven. Could it be that the day of the Lord description in, let's say, Zephaniah or Isaiah, which a lot of it's based on, you know what I mean? Which is it? I've got it mapped out here on my little thing. Isaiah 13:9 through to the end of the chapter. It's a lot like the description in Zephaniah as well about the day of the Lord and what that entails. But then I wondered, is the day of the Lord, obviously it's a cyclical event thing, a cyclical destruction for pockets of locations on Earth. I think Sodom and Gomorrah is a good one that people can relate to very quickly. And that involves a lot of fire coming down from heaven, and don't look at it directly, you can't handle it, it's insane, it's the fire of God, the holy judgment of God, you know what I mean? And I think there may have been many of those moments all over the Earth throughout history, but what's described in Revelation is a day of the Lord event. Once the armies have gathered, Gog and Magog, and he takes them to make war with the camp of saints, fire comes down and destroys them all. That's a day of the Lord event. So could the description of the day of the Lord we get in Scripture actually be describing the true end event, not tribulation, like people have equated it to? Should we now start to look at it through that lens instead? And it's a brutal time, but the whole earth will be consumed, for he will make a sudden end of all who live on the earth. That's what it says, in Zephaniah when it's describing the day of the Lord. Now, tribulation isn't an end of all who live on earth. People live through tribulation. People are resurrected through tribulation. But a lot of people equate the day of the Lord to being a description of tribulation. But at the end of this description in Zephaniah, it says the whole earth will be consumed, for he will make a sudden end of all who live on the earth. That's the Revelation 20 event where fire comes down and ends everything. Everything's ended. Full stop. End of the tape. Done. Story over. Everyone then in front of the great white throne for judgment. It's time. Then, only then, after all the judgment is completed and then things are thrown into the lake of fire, is there a new heaven, a new earth, and a new Jerusalem. Only then. But a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people think tribulation happens and then New Jerusalem comes and it's done.
Yeah.
They've condensed it into one event when there's 1,000, possibly 1,500 years between that, where there's a little season after the 1,000-year reign. And then great white throne judgment. So I think the day of the Lord descriptions we see, we need to reinterpret that as well. These visions of the days of the Lord. Not only are they talking about cyclical, small cataclysms for certain cultures who blasphemed against God in the most heinous of ways, and they received his divine judgment. But I think it's also explaining the final divine judgment at the end of time. I think that's the true day of the Lord, the final day of the Lord, and that's, again, just something I throw out there, which I thought was interesting because you mentioned it.
Yeah, that's one thing that we do have is we do have a sure word, and we must go by that. If God's word is the truth, then we need to have that at least on our side, regardless of what history tells us and all this other stuff. Because when I started digging into it a little bit more, I know you had mentioned about the Middle East and what people are calling Israel today. I started looking into what the Bible describes as Mount Zion, and that Mount Zion that's over there in the Middle East, what they call Mount Zion, is just a little hill. Like, it's nothing. Like, we got bigger hills over here in Tennessee. And it's just, it does not fit the description of what the Bible says about Mount Zion. And another thing, I started looking at when the Bible's speaking about the Garden of Eden and these 4 rivers that are flowing out of Eden, and one of them being the Euphrates River. And so, in a sense, if the Euphrates River, what people are calling Euphrates today, that river should flow out through Eden according to the Bible, but I don't think that's the case today. So that's another thing that causes red flags. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that not only do we not know where we are on the timeline, but we don't even know if the geological locations where we think we are even true as well. Like in America, I mean, I've heard speculations. We might be living in Egypt from the Bible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
No, I've heard that
I
too.
don't.
I think Alpha Talks has done some great works on that. Vitally from Alpha Talks. I want to get in touch with him. I discovered a buried email from him actually, which he sent me months ago asking to connect. So I need to respond to him, but it got buried and I just didn't realize it was there. So I think he might think I'm ignoring him or I'm mad at him or something. I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
so if he's listening to this, Vitally, we need to get in touch and we'll sort it out and we'll talk about stuff. But I saw he talked to JT follows JC, which you guys
Right.
had on recently, Jason. He was talking to him about this and on Decoding Babylon, and it's just got released on Jason's YouTube channel. And
Right.
he's basically laying out everything, the melted buildings, all the evidences, and he did some great work which shows that what they call the Middle East, and where we call Jerusalem in Israel today, that's not the geographical location everything actually went down. It seems
No.
like. And he actually has a great explanation. He says Pangea, this idea of
Oh yeah.
an unseparated landmass, that wasn't that long ago, and it's tribulation which separated everything. Do you get what I mean? And created,
That makes sense.
and it's possible. The apostles spread the gospel to every corner of the earth. And he says, the angel went over and pronounced the gospel to everybody before tribulation, you know what I mean? And everybody saw it. Is it possible that it was easy to get to everywhere at one point because everything was connected by land very easily and not separated by vast oceans, the treacherous oceans that would take months to traverse? You know what I mean? It's possible they literally just walked everywhere quite easily. And it's possible, the wilderness described that they wandered in for 40 years. Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years after escaping Egypt. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they say, people argue like that the distance they had to travel didn't take 40 years, should not have taken 40 years. It's not that far. And I think someone was giving an example of a Roman siege where they traveled way further in such a shorter amount of time, during a campaign all the way through Macedonia and through Turkey and everything like that and back all the way back into Greece and to Rome through Italy, and it's kind of like the distance they traveled is like literally 80 times more the distance than Israel had to travel and wander in the desert for. You know what I mean? Is it possible they weren't wandering through that land? They were wandering through a vast wilderness, a huge amount of land, and America is a huge amount of vast wilderness with varying forms, And I think there's a lot to be said for just how much we've been lied to about geographic locations of historical events. Absolutely. Like, things do not add up at all. And I think Alpha Talks has done a far more work on that than I have, which is brilliant. So I'd recommend people go look to him for the details. I've given just not even a great summary. I'm not even happy with the way I've described that because it's so detailed. There's so much
It is.
to say. It's kind of I just cannot say it all. I don't want to do it a disservice. So go check out Alpha Talk's work on it all. He talks about floating cities, Shangri-La, all the evidences in other cultures that there was this golden age and this beloved city, and these people make pilgrimage to, and all sorts of things. You know what I mean? He goes into American history and how it's all a lie, and it was possibly Egypt, honestly, and it's wonderful. But it's the thing, people are coming together now and kind of piecing the puzzles together, and I've just become a voice among them, but I'm by no means the guy who should be credited with any of this. I'm just a guy who has some ideas, that's all.
Yeah, and like you were saying about piecing the puzzles together, it's kind of like a progression of things because even this little season wouldn't really make sense if you still believed in like a spinning globe floating in outer space. Because you're like, well, the North Pole, like what? That doesn't make any sense. But you see what we're talking about, how there might be this massive magnetic mountain there in the center, which that might actually be Mount Zion. And so all of that doesn't make sense if you believe in a spinning ball globe. And even the alien stuff you were talking about, as far as we know, nothing gets in or out of that firmament unless God allows it to. So there's not going to be any alien invasion from outer space like we've all been programmed to believe. But it's all in all the movies, and a lot of times it's like an inversion. The mothership, like you were saying earlier, could be New Jerusalem descending down. And
Mm.
so it's always the mothership in the movies is always the bad guys, you know what I mean? But it may very well be that that's Jesus coming down on his city.
Mm.
And so just going along with that, I know a lot of people, uh, they, even if they are entertaining this idea, they just struggle with the fact that if Jesus Christ was truly reigning here on this earth for 1,000 years, how would it even be possible for Satan to deceive all the nations again? And where is Jesus? You know, is it just hidden from us as well?
Well, again, the main theory is that he is in the North Pole. And
Right.
what we have been told is the North Pole today is just a ever shifting ice sheet that moves constantly, and there's really nothing there, you know. And there's no point in going there; you won't find anything. It's just where you'll find the magnetic North Pole, which moves constantly, and a little red flagpole established somewhere, which is the official North Pole, apparently, which you can go and hold hands in a circle around on organised on and approved trips if you want to, you know, if you have enough money. But where they say the North Pole is and where you can visit, isn't it? It's not even close.
No.
It's just where you're allowed to get to commercial wise. And again, there's actually two poles. There's a magnetic north, which is constantly moving, and there's a stationary North Pole, which is the true, you know, the it's the like exact map dictated center. You know what I mean? That's how they call it. But if you look at like you can get maps that show wind movements in the North Pole and energy movements from solar flares, as they call them, or whatever, you know. The aurora borealis is supposed to be that. But again, from this new perspective, you've got to understand, no, it seems like if that's where the beloved city is and where the throne of God resides above, in the center of the stationary flat earth above the firmaments, then what we're seeing are radiating energy light forms from his throne, or perhaps from Jesus himself, who's in the center of the earth and his beloved city, you know. So these things do need new interpretations for what these phenomena are. But what I find more interesting is that the North Pole is moving, and it's been moving from the northern lands of America and Canada, the Americas, and now it's moving across and getting closer to Siberia, which is the other
Yeah, I
side.
saw that video. I saw that video you made on that. That was
Yeah,
very interesting.
and if
Yeah.
it could be possible, you know, that is the camp of saints. That it literally is a floating giant city, like which is
Hmm.
moving, and magnetic North Pole is the camp of the saints, which we can follow and trace and see where it's been moving to. And what is interesting about that, and this is again speculation, but this is all we can really do, but it's described that they will march up the broad expanse of the earth to make war
Mm.
with the camp of saints. Okay. Now, the largest expanse of earth we have is Siberia in Russia. And that's exactly where it's moving to right now. So that can't just be left out, you know what I mean? That does actually match up with scripture. And is it possible people will visibly start to see the beloved city move over the land of earth and will think we're being invaded when they see
So you
this?
think it'll be
Man,
like a progressive event?
Yeah,
So
like
it's kind of drumming everyone up. They're showing it on the news and everything like that.
yeah, it's like witnesses can see in Siberia. Reports are coming in that there's a spaceship in Siberia, you know, and then before you know it, it keeps moving and it's visible from that point. Then they can't. There's going to come a point, perhaps, where they can't hide it anymore because it's moved
Mm.
into overland, inhabited land. You know what I mean? And the interesting thing, you know, northern Siberia. This came out of the Tartarian research, but there's evidences that entire section of land, northern Siberia, is decimated. Have you actually seen it on Google Maps? What it looks like?
No,
It looks like a
no.
nuclear war has happened there.
oh wow.
There's just craters everywhere. Nothing lives on that steppe. You know what I mean? Well, actually people do live there, but it's a barren tundra. You know, they should move. Is what I'm saying. Like it's not worth it. Like just go a bit further south, please. But the people who do live there are like ancestor spirit worship tribes, which I talk about a lot. You know, and they have a basic form of life. You don't just get mail there very easily. You know what I mean? It's they're pretty cut off from society and in a way. But you just look at it and you can see it's utterly destroyed. And people say was Tartaria, because you look at old maps and it used to be full of things. this northern part of Siberia used to be full of cities and kingdoms, and you see these old maps where they've drawn and painted tiny little cathedrals and all sorts all over it, churches all over it, and people are saying, this old ancient Tartarian civilization that lived there was destroyed suddenly in a reset event, a Carrington-like event, an electrical discharge event which wiped everything out. And you look at the lands, and yeah, sure, it looks absolutely hammered. The land has just been pounded. It looks like it's had airstrikes across the entire 3,000-mile expanse. You know what I mean? It's just completely bombed to hell. There's nothing there that is left in these craters. You know what I mean? And could it be that was perhaps done immediately after the 1,000 years had ended, so people wouldn't live there? So people wouldn't be able to easily see and report what they're actually seeing when this thing comes back. You know what I mean? You have to, again, a reinterpretation of these events. Could it be it was utterly destroyed so people couldn't live there? So that people would not see the beloved city easily? Just because if that is the expanse which people will march up to make war with it, then it kind of all adds up why that's such a decimated no man's land now. It's kind of like a barrier between us and getting closer to the camp of saints. You know what I mean? It's just a thought of mine. But I remember people going on about it in the Tartarian research. So not Millennial Kingdom people. These are people just talking about Tartaria, and that fits. It fits the biblical narrative of the broad expanse, and that is the biggest expanse of land we have. That's closest to the North Pole, in the center. That's the biggest expanse you can march up to, and it's a wasteland. I don't sort of bring that into the mix here, but yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong though. The Day of the Lord judgment stuff can fall into this as well. And I don't believe when Satan was released it was peaceful or easy. I think he came and kicked up a huge fuss and likely caused earthquakes. We can call this the mud flood, which people go on about in Tartaria. So a lot of things got buried because of liquefaction of the mud. Things just started to sink, And perhaps that destruction, he literally destroyed that entire area as soon as he got out because he knew what was coming. Who knows? I mean, it says here in terms of the day of the Lord, if it wasn't Satan, it says here in Micah 1:4, and the mountains shall be molten under him, and the valleys shall be cleft as wax before the fire. The mountains quake at him, it says in Nahum 1:5, and the hills melt, and the earth is burned at his presence, and the world and all that dwell within. So is it possible God brought judgment onto that area because they were living in absolute rebellion and sin against him? And God does this. He brings judgment to those who don't repent. Why would he stop doing it in the modern age suddenly, you know what I mean? And that's what Shelley was getting at. And is it possible it's utterly destroyed because God utterly destroyed that horrible place full of blasphemy and sin against against him? That could have been it. Could it have been destroyed when Jesus came to establish his kingdom and make war? Because it wasn't, the tribulation was him making war. Tribulation was him destroying his enemies. And that could have been a place he destroyed during the war. Yeah. Jesus could have destroyed that entire expanse for all we know. Again, the history, we've been lied to. We don't know why the earth looks the way it does, but things just do not make sense.
I want you to get together. I want you to get together.
Anyway, just to summarize the North Pole, people think he might be there, but people also say that's an inversion. He's actually in the South Pole, whatever that means. I can't quite square that or understand that yet exactly, but does that mean it's a globe from that perspective? Is that how you get to that?
Or because Vinny B, that Vinny B guy that you interviewed, he seems to believe that it's on the south, right?
But I think he also doesn't think it's a round disc where there's an ice wall all the way around. I think he thinks it's square.
See, and I don't know what it is, to be honest.
Yeah. It could be a circle within a square of some kind, because it says he gathers from the four corners of the earth. You hear four corners of the earth a lot in the Bible.
Hmm.
So that implies it's a square or a rectangle or something. And could it
Yeah.
could it be maybe the map we get shown where it is a rectangle map? That's the common one you put on a poster on your wall. Could it actually be something like that, and the North and South Pole is like an island to the north and to the south? Maybe it is. I don't really know. Again, I don't claim to know the model. I just know it's not what we've been told. That's all. I'm open to it being anything. I don't claim to understand God's creation fully. I know it's enclosed. That's all I can say. It's an enclosed system,
Right.
and that's all I'm willing. That's as far as I'm willing to go right now, because there are too many models, too much speculation on this. And from our tiny perspective, I don't think we can know until we get to see it from his perspective. You know what I mean? I wasn't there when he laid the foundations of the earth, so I can only speculate where the camp of saints is based on my limited knowledge. But it seems like everything about the North Pole has some kind of satanic story or inversion about the possible truth. Santa Claus is a great example.
Yeah.
Santa Claus is literally God. He's an omnipotent, omnipresent being that judges you whether you're naughty or nice. The only difference is he gives you stuff, physical things, dependent on your good or bad karma. Okay, that's not Jesus. It's an inversion of Jesus. Jesus is an omnipotent, all-seeing Son of God who, well, don't judgment's over. It's now salvation through faith and grace. You know what I mean? But at the same time,
Yeah.
Santa Claus is a satanic inversion of Christ. That's
It
basically it.
is.
And it's saying, oh, Santa Claus is in the North Pole. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows if you're good or bad. And it's kind of, well, if Jesus is in the North Pole and he is the Son of God, then it's a parody on him. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a satanic parody of the truth.
Not only that, Santa has elves too, so that's like
Yeah,
he has his helpers,
which would be the saints. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a satanic inversion. Absolutely. And this is what I mean. It kind of makes sense of a lot of weird things when you start to
Yeah.
realize what's going on. It's the Wizard of Oz story. The Wizard of Oz is a satanic inversion of the pilgrimage to the North Pole to see him, which you have to do
Oh
during his
wow.
millennial. So think about it. It says those who don't make the yearly pilgrimage to see him will suffer drought. Okay, so I do believe during his millennial reign, it was people were going up to see him regularly. They were making the pilgrimage to the
Mhm.
to the beloved city every year to honor him, prove that they're on his side, type of thing. And those who didn't, the nations who didn't, suffered drought. This may explain why there are such sand-filled tundras everywhere, which just seem
Yeah.
so out of place. Maybe these are the places that did suffer the consequences of rebellion. And that's where the demons dwell, it seems, in these dry places. And perhaps, I don't know, because the Nephilim are still around and disembodied. They haven't been cast into the lake of fire yet during the millennial reign. That comes right at the end. So there's still rebellion during his reign. People still made the choice not to follow the yellow brick road and go see the man behind the curtain in his emerald city. It's
Oh
a it's,
wow.
it's a say
Wow.
it's a satanic
Wow.
it's a satanic inversion of the truth of what really happened. And we live in a world now that does nothing but mock the possible
Yeah.
truth of our reality. Do you get what I mean? Everything's just a satanic joke now, and it's run by clowns. I'm not going to bring that up. I'm not going to get into that.
What about, it's something I thought of while you were talking about all that and the possibility that Jesus and the camp of the saints could be at the North Pole. Um, I just had it on my mind the whole time is where Jesus said that he would draw all men unto himself.
Hmm.
And isn't it funny that the one place all of our compasses are pointing towards,
Hmm.
we're not even allowed to go. We can't even go see what our compasses are pointing us towards,
Hmm.
which is the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole. So I don't know. That's a very very interesting theory. And as you said a while ago, somebody brought up the theory that maybe the camp of the saints is in Antarctica or over the ice wall.
Hmm.
Have you read much of Admiral Byrd's diary? If that's true, he literally found a city, another civilization, and he described that city as being made of crystal, clear as clear as glass, and it didn't have any, it didn't need any lights. Like the city itself was emitting light, like this glorious light. And I don't know. That's interesting because I think that Admiral Byrd described seeing this, finding this city when he crossed over. He flew over the ice wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been a while since I have, watched videos on this or read anything about it. But it said something about these orbs of light or either these UFO type objects took control of his plane and his controls, and he could no longer, control where he was going, and they led him to this city. Have you gone down that rabbit hole?
Years ago, I did. This is the thing. I was there when all these things were first being talked about. You know, mainly when the flat Earth was getting big. All of Admiral
Yeah.
Byrd stuff was all the rage then. You know, and everyone was talking about it. It's been years. I got my flat Earth degree like I don't know 8 years ago. You know what I mean? Like I've moved on from that and thought about other things. I've been swimming in Nephilim history and clowns for like 7 of those years. So I need to go back and refresh myself on all of it. But I do remember everything you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
He found, and he kept saying, there's a land yet undiscovered just south of South America, which is as large as, and he goes on to explain that there's still places to discover yet. We haven't discovered everything, you know, and he's saying there is this land. Now, where exactly he went, did he go beyond the ice wall? I don't know. I think it's possible that there's land we don't know about within our enclosed system, you know, that just isn't on a map, and all of our commercial flights and boats and everything like that will never see it because you're not allowed in your paths, and not your paths are already determined. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to go out and deviate from your paths. If you do, there's usually military intervention. You know, that's how it usually works. There's no fly zones for a reason. You know what I mean? And our world is very small, I think, compared to what is actually there. I mean, I don't know. Have you heard about the moon map?
Yes.
You know,
I have.
and that shows that, you know, beyond our little circle is far more. You know, and the dome stretches far further than we can understand. It's not simply just over our little mapped out little place that we call home. You know, who knows? Who honestly, who knows? Like, and this is why I say I'm not willing to box myself in I'm not trying to use a pun there, but I'm not trying to I'm not trying to limit the scope of God's creation. That isn't me saying space is real. I know that's not the case. It's an enclosed system. It's limited. It's finite. It's not infinite as we get inverted and told, you know. But I do think it's a lot bigger and a lot more mysterious than we know from our current perspective, which is why I said at the start we're doing the best we can with what we've got here.
Yeah.
But it's fun to speculate. It sure is fun to speculate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I lean towards personally North Pole. That's where I'm leaning towards for the Camp of Saints.
Yeah. What if I can't remember where this was that Admiral Byrd, found this city? Was it? I mean, was it over the ice wall, or did, because he also went to the North Pole, didn't he? Didn't he also explore up there?
I kind of thought it was the north where he saw the mammoths and all that, but I could be wrong.
Well, it matches the Smoky God story, doesn't it? Which is a father son who sailed north. It got really, really cold, and then suddenly it got really warm again. And then before they know it, they've hit an island, which after going through some weird caves, almost as though they went into the earth, and suddenly they're in this place full of slightly taller humans who have a king over them, and it's this perfected place with bizarre technologies and a warm glow everywhere, their own sun. It's like this is very, it's a different, these stories are everywhere of these perfected Edens in this place just beyond, and it's kind of like, have you heard of the stories of the giants in Americas? The giant fossils that were all discovered in the 1800s.
Yes.
Like in the 1800s, there's just a vast discovery of hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of giant skeletons, just digging them out of mounds, left, right, and center, all over America, across every state. And the newspapers were going wild during that time period, and they were documenting archaeologists discovers 16-foot giants here over here. Archaeologists discovers 10 bodies of 12-foot giants here, you know. And these are incredible archaeologists of the day are the ones discovering them. You know, they're not like nobodies who are... And all the local newspapers who are involved are all reporting these discoveries everywhere, but we don't have one giant skeleton to prove it. Because the Smithsonian came in and took them all.
Yeah.
This is a lot. This is the same thing we're seeing here. You know, there's all these evidences from this early, not that long ago, time period, where people were discovering all sorts of things that corroborate with biblical mythology and history. You know, but we have no evidence for it today. It's all gone. Mm-hmm. I would have thought Admiral Byrd would maybe have done a sketch or two of what he saw. You know, possibly documented a lot more thoroughly than we probably see today. That's how it goes. You know, we've been given glimpses, and butchered glimpses at that, of what actually happened. People are actively working against us to hide more and more. That's why all these amazing architectural buildings, perhaps remnants of the Millennial Reign, have all mysteriously burnt down. All of them have great... Every city has a great fire of the 1800s at some point, or the late 1700s, the great fire of whatever, you know, that has destroyed just miles upon miles of buildings and land, you know, and it's kind of... It's shocking. I mean, even where I live in this city in the north of England, it's a small town, you know, and it's not much. But even we have architecture here, as I described earlier, which is insane, huge, Romanesque pillared structured buildings, extremely intricate designed, beautiful architecture just slapped in the middle of this tiny city, you know, this little village city thing. And I looked into the history of it, and we used to have this beautiful town hall, and it was incredible. The look of this thing, it was just insane. It looked like a cathedral of beautiful standards, you know what I mean? It was incredible. And it had all the Antiquitech attached to it, and all the Gothic architecture, as we call it, to it, and everything like that. It had its own clock and everything, like Big Ben. And it's gone. We don't have that today. We have the buildings surrounding it, which are of similar architecture, but the town hall is gone. And I looked into it, and surprise, surprise, fire, burnt down. Mysterious fire in the middle of the night, out of nowhere, utterly destroyed. Gone. This beautiful piece of architecture. We have photos and remnants of it, but it got burnt down in the 1940s.
I want you to get together.